Hello, welcome to week 5, um, March 2nd through 5th. So, this is our last week of the short story unit. So, I'm going to run through the slides. If you're watching this, it's of course because you were absent on one of our synchronous days, or maybe both of them. So, follow along and I'll explain everything that happens this week. So, this week we have Google Slides week 5. Those are the slides you're looking at. We have Google Slides week 4 and the POV photo walk. Those were due last week. So, if you could get those to me if you haven't already, make sure you do that. And then for our asynchronous assignment, we have a literary elements GO. That stands for graphic organizer, and I'll go over that as well. We have an honors assignment this week. So remember, honors is embedded. It's an optional thing. So you are not required to partake in that. But if honors is something that you are interested and want to pursue, please make sure you complete this assignment. I will be showing you what it looks like at the end of this first part of the video. So last week, this is a quick review. Last week, we dove into the first half of our literary elements. These are things that we find in narrative writing, fictional short storytelling. So let's kind of recap here. First, we looked at character and we talked about how characters need to be interesting, believable, and we have to have empathy. We have to care about them. And that happens by having characters that are flawed. They have faults, they're not perfect, they make mistakes, because that is something that we can relate to and connect to in the real world. We also ran through this bullet point list, these questions. We did that with some examples. Figuring out how can we better understand a character. We looked at dialogue, physical appearance, their inner self, and then how they interact with other characters. We talked about plot and how plot is probably the second most important element in storytelling, that the climax is going to be the most important aspect of that, in the sense that if you remove it, the story kind of falls apart. There has to be some sort of issue or conflict or problem that the characters are facing. And that the thing that we really need to take away with plot is that a character has to change, even if it's just a little bit after coming out of the climax, because that again mirrors real life. That's something that happens when you go through an experience that's really impactful, whether that's negatively or bad or positively. We talked about setting and how setting gives us layers of information, whether it's the big picture stuff or detailed things. They give us an idea of where we're at in the story, in the world, what's happening, and provides that backdrop for the characters in the story. And then we wrapped it up with point of view and perspective. And I had a lot of fun talking about this with you all. We learned that they're different, but they work together, that a point of view is first established. That's who is our narrator, who's telling the story, who is the main character, the eyes that we're seeing the story from. And then from that, we can find the perspective. How does the narrator perceive what's happening within the story? And I hope you're not tired of my Star Wars references yet, but this is a really good quote from one of the Star Wars movies that connects to exactly this. Obi-Wan, Luke's mentor, he says, "Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view." So this is totally referencing what we learned about, that when your point of view and perspective changes from character to character or whatever it is, that's going to shift the story greatly, and it's going to impact how the characters are perceiving things and also how the audience or the reader perceives things. So now let's take a look at the other 4 literary elements that are on our list. So first we have tone, and this is really important because this can definitely shift the way that a reader or audience perceives what's happening in the story. So tone is simply the emotions and the feelings that the writer intends the reader to feel. So what you're going to do is you're going to pause this video, and I want you to play this video in the slides, but I want you to mute it. So you're going to watch the first couple seconds with no sound, and I want you to be thinking about what kind of thoughts you're having, emotions, what are you maybe assuming, and write that down right here. And then I want you to play it again. Again, you don't have to play the whole video, just the first 15 seconds is awesome. play the video again, the first 15 seconds, but with music. And then I want you to, again, take note of what are your emotions, thoughts, feelings, what are you assuming as you're watching it with the sound on. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so I bet you had a very different experience watching this clip, even though it was just a few seconds with music and without music. The point of this is to show you that tone impacts everything. The first time we watched it with no music, it's a nice serene drive through a scenic route, and there's sunshine and trees, and maybe they're going on an adventure, who knows. And then all of a sudden we play the music and it's scary, it's intense, it's suspenseful, it feels like there's a monster lurking, and it's just a completely different feel to the scene. So that is what tone does, whether it's in movies and film, whether it's through the written word. We can create a tone. The writer, the creator will create a tone that the audience and the reader is intended to feel. So sometimes the emotions that the reader feels will be the same that the characters are feeling, but sometimes they're not the same. And when this happens, this is use of dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is when the reader knows something, or the audience knows something super important that the character does not know. And when we see that interaction right before the character finds out, or when things are happening but they have no clue still, that's dramatic irony, because we're sitting or in our chair watching or reading and going, oh my gosh, they have no idea. This is going to be crazy when they find out. And it's very dramatic and suspenseful. So what I want you to do is think about a situation in a story where there's dramatic irony. I have two examples here. We've got Belle from Beauty and the Beast. If you think about it, during this whole entire story, she has no idea that the Beast is really a human prince. There was a spell. She doesn't know. And then Romeo and Juliet. Romeo thinks that she is dead, and she's really not. She's just asleep, but we know that, and it's very suspenseful. So I want you to think for a moment. You can refer back to your list of favorite movies, shows, stories, and write down just a couple that you can think of where there would be dramatic irony. Okay, next we have style. So this is more focusing on the written language with storytelling. So you'll find that this is something you can analyze specifically. If you're looking at film, this is going to be something you'll analyze with either looking at the script or screenplay, or maybe having subtitles on when you're watching it. So this is the specific stylistic choices that writers make to create specific tone in their stories. It's all about, again, the writing itself. So these are linguistic elements to look for. Linguistics means the written word. Language. First of all is the diction, that's word choice. Elevated, difficult, or is it simple and ordinary? Think about when you're reading something, is it pretty easy to follow along? You understand everything that the characters are saying, or are they using strange vocabulary that you're not familiar with? It's kind of your level of understanding and comfortability. Are the sentences and paragraphs long and complex? Are they short and to the point? Is there a typical pattern? Maybe when you're reading a book, I think this could be a choice of style. Maybe the chapters are really long, they're like 20 pages each, or maybe they're really short, like 5 or 10 pages. That's a stylistic choice. Dialogue, back to dialogue. Is there dialogue? There should be. And how much of it is there? Is it verbal, nonverbal? Are we just reading about character descriptions and the way that they're moving and acting? Is there lots and lots of interaction, verbal interaction between characters? What is the dialogue like? And then lastly, this is important. Does the style stay consistent, or does it change throughout the story? Because again, if our point of view is changing, let's say you're reading a book and every other chapter is a different character telling the story, or it trades off between two main characters telling the story, that point of view should shift to the style, because they're two different characters. So the way that it's written, the way that the characters think and speak is going to be different based off of that. So those are things we can look for. Next, we have symbolism. This is all about representation. So specific objects are going to represent an idea or topic. So you're taking something that's very concrete and tangible, and you're representing something that's kind of more abstract and philosophical, if you will. So this could be colors, shapes, objects, and it doesn't always have to be, but sometimes you'll find that symbolism is connected to theme. So these pictures, classic roses typically represent romance, or you could look at the color red representing anger, hatred, that type of thing. Doves usually are a symbol of peace. And the thing with symbolism, if you're trying to figure out if there is symbolism present in the story, because there's not always, but if the author is going to intentionally use symbolism, the more prominent an image is or an object is in a story, the more likely it is meant to be read symbolically. So, for example, if you're reading a book or watching a movie and you see or read a coffee cup mentioned like twice, a specific coffee cup, 2 or 3 times, probably not a symbol. If it's mentioned like 8 times or more, or it's mentioned 5 times in really, really important scenes or parts of the story, it's probably going to be meant to be a symbol. So, what I want you to think about is, are there any other symbols that come to your mind? You can kind of go off of this idea, maybe again go back to that list of your favorite characters and stories. Is there any symbols that are pretty obvious in those? And I want you to write them down. So go ahead and do that. Okay. So our last literary element that we're going to be looking at is theme. And this is something that you should find in every single story. Because again, you've told me this, stories are meant to teach people things and to present ideas that they haven't thought about before. So a theme is simply a message or a lesson woven throughout a story. So it is something that the story refers to, something that the reader or audience will walk away with. 2 things to note. Theme can be symbolized. And again, if symbolism is not prominent in a story, then don't worry about it. But if an author or storyteller decides to use symbolism, I would bet you more often than not that the theme would be involved in that. And then this is something we're going to be working with this week. Themes are universal. They are meant to be applied to multiple stories. So we're going to have lots of practice working with creating themes that are universal. And I'll show you more of what I mean by that. So to kind of give you an idea, this is something that people are often confused by. Topic and theme are not the same thing. They work together, but they're not the same thing. So a topic is usually just one word. Example, love, forgiveness, anger, tragedy, hate, anything like that. If this is helpful for you, it is for me. I like to think about it like this. They're isolated things. Fear, anger, joy, sadness, disgust. These are just standalone words, standalone ideas that are individualized. Theme is when you take these words or word and you turn it into a message, an idea. And it's usually a complete full sentence. So if I'm talking about love as a topic, maybe in the story I'm looking at, the theme could be true love takes patience and a willingness to look beyond the surface. And if you notice, this is not something that's very specific to any story. I didn't mention a specific story, but you can totally see how this would be a theme, an idea, a message, or a lesson to take away. So that's what I mean by universal. So we're going to try to work with this and just kind of practice, simply just practice. So I have 3 stories and you're going to come up with the second 2. But this first one, let's say I'm looking at The Lion King. If I were to come up with a list of topics, and this is not extensive, I could come up with more topics. You might have different ideas than me, but these are some topics that I thought of when I thought of the story. Loss, regret, facing your fear. And now I need to figure out how I could turn those topics into a theme statement, something that's universal. So I'm going to say, this is what I came up with. Facing your fears can help heal emotional wounds from loss and regret. Now, if you notice, again, I did not mention the Lion King. I didn't mention Simba or Mufasa. I didn't mention any character, and that's because this is a universal theme statement. This is something you could totally apply to another story, even if the story's very different. So what you're going to do is the same thing. You're going to come up with a list of topics and a theme statement. But the next one, Star Wars, I've already come up with topics, so I want you to come up with a theme statement. And if you are unfamiliar, if you're watching this right now and you've never seen the movies, you can skip this part because that's not your fault that you've never seen them. But if you have, I want you to think about these topics and add any more if you feel like there's more to add. And then I want you to write a theme statement. Think about what would be the biggest idea or takeaway from the stories. So go ahead and do that. Okay, last one. Again, if you haven't seen this, you can leave it blank. I give you permission. But now you will, again, add to this topic list if you think there's more to add. And then I want you to come up with a theme statement. So go ahead and do that. All right, so let me tell you about your asynchronous assignment. So this is going to be a way for you to connect all these literary elements that we've learned about toward something that you love, a story that you love. And again, this could be a book, a TV show, a movie, video game, comic book, anything that involves a story that you love. I want you to use it. And you're just going to pick one story. So you're going to, with your chosen story, going to describe all the literary elements in that story using the graphic organizer on the next slide. So let me show you that. All right. So this is what you should see in Canvas. So this is the graphic organizer. There are text box, if I can actually, I'll show you. There are text box already here in each bubble that you can start typing, and you are going to do something like this. This is my example. So I just chose Cinderella. It's not my favorite, but I chose it because it's something that's pretty familiar. It's a classic fairy tale. So you're going to go through each bubble and fill in what you know about the story and based off of everything we've learned. So you're going to tell me also what the name of your story is. You can include a picture if you want. So for example, characters, I'm just listing the characters. You need to obviously include the most important one, the main character, but list the characters. For plot, just give me like 2 to 3 sentences summarizing what happens in the plot. Setting, you're going to tell me okay, sorry, this is my bad. I forgot to edit this. For setting, you're going to tell me where is this story taking place. So I need to delete this and type, we're going to type kingdom, there's a castle, Cinderella's house. Think about all the places that are in the story. Any other details that you think are important. Point of view. If your story is a book, you need to tell me, you need to tell me either way, but it's going to be easier if it's a book to tell me, is it first person, second, or third person? I put the movies are, you could say, typically in third person because they're not focusing on a specific character in terms of narrating over it. So I would say third person, and then tell me who is the main character. Who are we focusing on? For tone, I want you to tell me what type of emotions or thoughts or feelings are we supposed to have when we read or watch this story. So for Cinderella, the audience feels empathy toward her because she's a nice person and she gets treated horribly. You could also think about this idea that anything is possible, kind of whimsical, magical. And then we have symbolism. Again, this might not be present in your story, so if it's not, I want you to tell me that. Don't just leave this blank, because then I'll figure that you didn't even try. So tell me if there's not, but if there is, tell me what is. So I just put the objects that I think might represent something. Glass slipper for purity, a ball gown could represent the transformation. Her name kind of shows her social status and what she does. Theme, true love takes patience and a willingness to look beyond the surface. That's the one I came up with. And then style. So think about how would you describe the style of the story? The language is going to be simple in this story because it's a children's fairy tale. It's not difficult to understand. There's lots of whimsical music and elements to that. So you can use this as a means of an example to kind of help you, but you are going to fill this out on your slides that are in Canvas, the second slide. So let me go back. Okay. So now I'm going to show you our honors assignment for this week. So if you click in the slides, you should see this. So for honors, you are going to analyze the 8 literary elements, all the ones that we just looked at, in a selected story of your choice. If you want, you could totally use the same story that you used for the graphic organizer that we just went over, or you could pick something different. It's up to you. It might be easier if you use the one that you just worked with, but again, it's totally up to you. You're going to provide a written response to every question below. Each response should be a minimum of a paragraph, 2 to 3 sentences, 5 sentences, somewhere around there. So first off, you also need to tell me right here the name of your story, the author, storyteller, and then what form of story it is. So for example, if I'm doing Star Wars, I would say Star Wars. I give the specific name of the movie. The creator, storyteller is George Lucas, and then it's a movie. It's not a book. It's not any of that stuff. So you're going to tell me that right here. And then character. So you're going to go through and answer all these questions. There's 8. So think about who is the main character. Describe them based off the bullet points. You can even just go right underneath and answer, how do they communicate? What do they look like? What are their habits? All that. Plot. What is the conflict or climax in the story? How did the character in your favorite story change as a result of the climax? Setting. Describe the setting, what the setting usually looks like in a few sentences. What parts of the setting are more important or were very important to the plot of the story or character development? And if there's not, just say that. POV and perspective. How would the story be different or change if the point of view and perspective changed to maybe the antagonist or the villain? What specific events would look different from this new point of view? Would the theme change? Tone. Is there any use of dramatic irony? Remember, that's when we know something as the audience or reader, but the characters don't. What type of tone or mood do you think the author, creator intended the audience to feel and why? And does the tone connect to the theme? Style. What is the style like? You can just answer these bullet point questions. Symbolism. Is there symbolism present? And if so, what is it? What's that object and what does it represent? Theme. What do you believe is the universal theme found in the story? Describe evidence from the story to support your idea. So again, you are going to respond to every single one of those. You can pick whatever story you want. I would hope you pick something that's interesting and that you love. And if you want, you can make it the same story that you use in the graphic organizer. So that's our honors option. Okay, this might be a longer video. So now we're on day 2 of synchronous for week 5. Okay, so this is when we're gonna get back to our Monster the Roller Coaster story. So you are going to read the short story again. Obviously, you won't be reading it with me because you're watching the video, so it's linked in the slides and you can read it on your own. Read it again, and as you're reading it, I want you to be thinking specifically about topics that you might find, any important details to the story, and pay attention specifically to the characters. I know they don't have names except for 2 of them, but pay attention to kind of maybe how you would describe them, what they're like. And then we are going to work with the graphic organizer. So after reading that a second time and thinking about those things, we are going to, okay, let me switch over. Okay, so we're going to use this graphic organizer. This is an example, but it should look like this, empty. So we're going to come up with a summary, we're going to list topics and then key details, and all of that is going to help us come up with a theme statement. So this is an example of one that my class last year came up with for the Avengers. So we came up with a summary, somebody wanted but so then. So you can look through that. Topics, these are, again, one word topics, ideas that you see present in the stories. And then any type of details that you think are important. So I'm not looking for a specific thing, a specific list. I just want you to list anything that you think is very important to the story. And then we came up with this. Courage allows people to attempt difficult tasks in their lives, even when there's a chance of failing. So you're going to do that on this slide with the Monster of the Roller Coaster story. So go ahead and pause this video and complete this slide. Okay, after that, you are going to answer these 3 questions for me. I want you to think about what characters in the story do you relate to and why? What did you think about BJ Novak's use of dialogue? And what symbolism did you find in his story? So go ahead and respond to these questions. Okay. So we're full circle moment. We're going to come back to this POV photography assignment. Our goal was to see how POV and perspective changes what we see, think, or feel about. And I want you to answer this question. How does the assignment connect to the theme in Novak's short story? But before I have you answer that, I'll show you on this video your responses. So this is a combination of multiple different classes. Again, this is not on your slide, but it is on my copy of it. So these are just a few pictures that I received, and these are some ideas that people came up with. So what does life mean to you? What does it look like? What does it represent? The love of family was very important for a lot of people. I had lots of students mention being able to be dedicated and work hard, specifically in sports. The memories that you make with your loved ones. There were nature metaphors talking about change and growth. I think a lot of people talked about just doing things that bring you joy. That's important in life, learning new things, loving others and being kind, working together with other people, doing what you're passionate about. I had a few people talk about being resilient and overcoming obstacles. Kind of a metaphor about motions and seasons and how life changes and shifts, and then just living in the moment. So I want you to take a look at these pictures and think about this question. How did this assignment and the responses you saw from your peers connect to the theme in Novak's short story? He talks about life as a roller coaster. So I want you to respond here in your slides. Go ahead and do that. Okay, to end this week, we have a first chapter Friday, and this is for a fantasy genre. So this is called Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and it's pretty cool. So you can check out this trailer. It's a book trailer, and see what it's all about. But that is all I have for you for week 5. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and I can't wait to see you next. Bye.